Now, there are a few vehicles that hold a very special place for me. One of them is most definitely the Suzuki Vitara, because my mom had a 1989 three-door 4x4 when she was abroad. And that was also the very first 4x4 I've ever actually been in. And now we have the new 2021 model. And yes, this one is all-wheel drive. Now what we have here is the fourth generation Suzuki Vitara. Now, some of you will say that fourth generation, it's been around for a while. And that is actually true. The first time I drove this was a couple of years ago, and I remember being very impressed when I walked into it expecting to be unimpressed. I found that Vitara to be nicely balanced and well suited for the kind that customers want in the metropolis particularly. Now, in the previous three generations of the Vitara, they've stuck to the front engine rear-wheel drive or front engine 4x4 configuration. It was a body-on-frame vehicle, except for the third generation, which had a body or a frame welded underneath instead of bolted on. Now, this one goes full-on crossover. That's one of the reasons why actually we liked it. And Suzuki also downsized the whole thing. They dropped that grand badge and went with just a Vitara, and they stuck to their guns, meaning they stuck with their specialty of small vehicles. So this is the facelifted version of the Suzuki Vitara. Actually, our boy Marcus was the first one to drive this from our team. It has a different bumper, a bit more garnishing, a bit more detail there. There's some extra bits and pieces here, new wheel design, new cladding, and then new chrome bits on the door handles. Again, personally, I'm not a fan of that, but if it works for you, great. This version is the two-tone one. This measures 4.175 meters long and 1.61 meters tall. Actually, it's one of the few vehicles that I can actually look over. And speaking of looking over, this one has a panoramic glass roof, which is something a lot of Suzuki customers like. So the backside of the Vitara Allgrip, well, looks about the same. Has a black bumper, which is actually quite nice with that silver skid type plate there underneath. Now, if you'll notice that there is a light there in the middle, that is your reverse light. The tail lights are new. Of course, the Vitara emblem, there's no more grand here. It has the Allgrip logo, and that's really all about it. Oh, and a spoiler too. You pop the trunk with this, a button there, and what you get when you measure it is a space that when the seats are folded down flat, well, semi-flat, a space that is 61 inches long and 40 inches wide. But the interesting thing about the cargo area of the Vitara is actually the floor there. It's a false floor. It conceals another compartment right here. Oh, and by the way, the false floor neatly tilts up into a little slot there to show you the space underneath. Here you can keep a lot of things. Tools, you can keep your early warning device. There's also space underneath for the spare tire. You can put more tools there. But this is actually, I find it very useful because, for example, if you put your laptop, you can put it under there and nobody will be the wiser. And also, there's a tonneau cover that tilts up when you open the tailgate. So here's the engine bay of the new Suzuki Vitara Allgrip. What you have under here is a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder non-turbo. It makes 115 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 156 Newton meters of torque at 4,400. Now, I had thought that Suzuki would go for, say, the turbocharged versions for this Allgrip, but no. Surprisingly, they went for a non-turbo. And also, I can tell that without even looking at the engine code, that this is an older generation of engine from Suzuki. Nothing wrong with that, but you can tell by the position of the exhaust manifold. This one has it in front, which is a bit more classic, whereas a lot of newer vehicles, they tend to have the exhaust manifold in the back with heat shielding on the firewall. It's just the way that car makers and engineers are designing the new generation of engines. In previous generations of the Vitara, the engine was mounted along the length of the vehicle, aligned with the chassis rails from front to back. The reason behind that is because those vehicles were primarily rear-wheel drive with four-wheel drive. So they need to be able to send the power to the rear wheels. This one is a primarily front-wheel drive vehicle. That is why the engine and the transmission are mounted crosswise or transverse relative to the length of the vehicle. So, but to give it the all-wheel drive capability, what Suzuki did was they came up with a transaxle that had a little bit sticking out the back. So that way they can mount a propeller shaft and send drive to the rear wheels so you can have the all-wheel drive capability when you need it. Now, for the last 10 years, I've actually really liked Suzuki's approach to auto interiors. It's actually really no nonsense. It just makes a lot of sense. It's very minimalist. This one is no different. I like their approach with their design for the steering wheel. It feels really great in the hand. It even has paddle shifters right here. The gauge cluster is actually very clear, and it has a nice color display right there in the middle. The shifter, perfectly placed. The handbrake, again, everything is great. Even the positioning of the pedals is perfect. The comfort of these seats is actually really nice as well. That's something Suzuki is pretty much known for, because they've got seats that hold you very well yet are still really comfortable on long drives. Now, there is some sacrifice in the back seat when it comes to space. I mean, it's not going to be that spacious because this is still a subcompact crossover. It's not a bigger compact SUV. It's more for starting out families, couples, young families, that kind of thing. There are two ISOFIX anchors there, so you can put in two child seats, one on the left and one on the right. But primarily, this Vitara is going to be enjoyed from the front. Now, speaking of the front, what do you get? Of course, all power, this being a top-of-the-line model. Power windows, automatic window here, door locks, folding mirrors. All right. And then, of course, power steering. It's electronic power steering, so don't expect that much feel from it. It has cruise control, but not the adaptive kind, which is actually odd because I saw that there was a space for a sensor up in front for an adaptive cruise control, but this one does not have it. So this one has standard cruise control. You have your steering audio controls here on the left side, paddle shifters, your light stalk on the left, and your wiper stalk on the right. Your fog light control is actually right here on the panel over here, along with the traction control, downhill, hill descent control, and the parking sensors. You've got a 10-inch screen. It's got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, Bluetooth, USB, aux-in, all those good features, including navigation. So if you get lost somewhere without cell phone signal or data, well, you can turn off Waze and just go with the navigation. But the novel feature here is the car info. So when you press that, the clinometer comes up. So it gives you your pitch angle, your roll angle, your compass. It even has a barometer and altimeter. So I can tell just by looking at it now, we are at 263 meters above sea level. Pretty neat. Just below it is the climate control panel. Nothing much to report there. You have a USB port, aux port, and a 12-volt socket there. There's actually a provision for a 12-volt socket in this armrest, but it's actually not fitted, which is strange. You have dual cup holders here, but the thing I find the most interesting is the Allgrip drive mode selector system just aft of the shifter. So most of the time you're going to have it in auto. So when you press that, a little animation comes up on the multi-info display. It looks actually really nice. When you put it to sport mode, another animation comes up there, and it gives you better handling, or actually better control of the four-wheel drive system. And then, if you're going somewhere a lot more slippery, you can activate snow mode. And again, an image or a video of the Vitara in snow mode comes up on the screen. Now, some will say, what use does snow mode have in the Philippines? Well, consider this. The settings for snow mode and sand are actually very, very similar. So if you go somewhere like the Lawag Sand Dunes, that may come in really handy. Now, one very clever thing about the Vitara is the panoramic sunroof. Now, normally in most vehicles with this kind of a glass roof, only one panel slides. But in the Vitara, they made it two. They split it in the middle to be able to allow both panels to slide back. Suzuki did that because the Vitara is not a big vehicle. If it's one panel sliding back, it's gonna go way past the spoiler. That's not good. So they split it in two to make it more compact, which is perfect for a vehicle like this. The last Suzuki Vitara I drove was the front-wheel drive model. Now this one, yes, it does say Allgrip in the back with all-wheel drive, but primarily, most of the time, this is still going to be front-wheel drive. So it should feel relatively similar, pretty much the same. But no, it actually feels quite different. Granted, it has been a while since I drove that Vitara. Maybe my perception has changed, but from what I remember, yes, the steering feels more weighted. It feels firmer all around, which is actually quite good because it may seem a bit heavier, but that kind of adds to the feeling of quality. That's something we normally expect from, let's say, German cars, not a Suzuki. The thing you'll really love about the Vitara is when you drive it hard, especially with this all-wheel drive. When you go around the bend, for instance, like this, with pretty good speed, it's not trying to get away from you. It's not trying to wiggle all around. No, it just feels planted. So right now we're in sport mode, and then we're gonna take some 90-degree corners. It just feels so sure-footed, and it's very, very dusty out here. So the fact that I can actually enjoy it like this, it's really good fun. And when you punch out of the corners, yes, the M16 engine, yes, it's not really that fast, not that powerful. For what it is, it actually manages it well. And when it comes to fuel economy, we can't really complain. 10 kilometers per liter in the city, that's really good. 14 to 15 kilometers on the highway, that's really fantastic. So if you're looking for something that you can enjoy and still be efficient, this one will fit the bill. Now, when all is said and done and you put it to auto mode, into normal mode, the Vitara Allgrip just tames down and cruises nicely. Now, it's actually expected that a vehicle this small is going to be noisy. There's going to be some tire noise coming into the cabin. But actually, Suzuki used Continental tires on all four corners. We were not expecting that. Normally, you get budget tires on these kinds of vehicles, but not in this one. But still, we want more power because a lot of the Vitara's competitors have options for turbocharged engines, small turbo engines. And even the naturally aspirated ones, the 1.5 liters that are typical in this class, well, they're even more powerful than the 1.6 liter in the Vitara. So we really hope they could have improved on that. So now we're ready for another 0 to 100 test with the Vitara Allgrip. So let's preload it, drive, and go. There's 60, 80, and 100. So after that quick test, we can tell you now that the Vitara Allgrip is not quick. It did it in 16.18 seconds. So now we come to the price of the Vitara Allgrip. Now this one, brace yourselves, retails for 1,468,000 pesos. Yes, this is actually the price of the Vitara Allgrip. The only other lower variant is the non-two-tone version, the monotone one, which is at 1,458,000. Suzuki actually pulled out their front-wheel drive Vitara models because, well, in terms of pricing, they couldn't match up with a lot of the new contenders in the class, particularly from China. And that is actually the problem that Suzuki has with the Vitara. They are not sourcing this from China or India or Japan or Thailand, Indonesia, or any other country we have a free trade agreement with. This is a European vehicle. Actually, specifically, Hungary. Okay, fine, it's Eastern Europe, but it's still Europe. And it has to pay all those duties just to be able to get into our market. It's actually admirable that Suzuki was able to punch through that hurdle because that is a big obstacle in your way when it comes to vehicle sourcing. Now, overall, the vehicle does drive well and it is fun. And no doubt, whoever goes for a vehicle like this is going to enjoy driving one every day. I know I did, and if my mom was still around, I know she would enjoy it as well. Guys, this is Vince of AutoIndustriya. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think of the Vitara Allgrip in the comments below. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.